Yeah, just prepared a few slides to sort of take you through vTime and some of the things we've learned. I'm going to share some demographics with you. I'm going to share some stats with you. But for those of you who haven't come across vTime, available now on Gear VR. It's featured on the top banner right now, actually, so fairly easy to find. It's featured on the Cardboard app. It's currently available for mobile VR, but it's going to be out for the Rift, for the Vive, and PSVR very soon. It's a free social VR app, and we're based up in Liverpool, which is relevant because Liverpool is, as far as software engineering and game software engineering goes, really one of the sort of cradles around the UK. A lot of really mature and experienced talent, and a lot of that we were able to attract into the vTime team. So our background collectively is very much in high-end video game development. I was at Sony for 15 years, ran the studio in Liverpool there for many years, and a lot of the guys that are working with us at vTime have got similar backgrounds on the coding, art, and product design side of things. So vTime was actually named by Gartner, one of the world's leading analysts, as a cool vendor for the consumer mobile application in a report that came out last week. We're really pleased about that. Previous recipients of that sort of accolade were Airbnb and Instagram and Dropbox. So if we just get anywhere near those guys, I'd be very, very happy. But it's always great to get external validation for what you're doing. So I thought I'd start off giving you an idea of, who are the users. We're a consumer app. We're very much focused on the consumer VR market, which is still practically non-existent. Let's be honest. Mobile VR is a great, great space, and there are some meaningful numbers happening. But we're at the very early days of the consumer market finally arriving into the VR ecosystem. And we're, because of our background and having always developed consumer products, are very much focused on that. So we've numbers are derived from various sources, but predominantly we did a survey amongst registered users recently. So this is some of the sort of early level findings that we got out of it. Well, we thought we were going to do a survey, but it actually turned into a full-blown study because the response rate was about 2,500 people have responded. So it's a fairly large sample size. 85% male, 15% male. I haven't seen this sort of data for other VR apps, so I'm not sure how that sort of compares, but we're obviously glad that we're in double figures and have a split that's not just weighted towards one particular gender. And then the age group, as you would expect, these are early adopters. These are the people that are sitting on the train wearing a VR headset because they fully embrace this sort of, being somebody who's at the very cutting edge of new mediums and technology. 21 to 39 age group. The sort of split that we're seeing, I mentioned Gear VR and Cardboard. The majority of downloads are on Gear VR, clearly, because it's we support all the handsets that work with the Gear VR, the consumer edition, as well as all the way back to the Note 4, whereas on Cardboard, we currently support a select number of handsets, because we don't want to just publish the app on all the handsets and then deal with the fallout later, which seems to be normally what you do as an Android developer, just stop supporting handsets that give you trouble. We're taking a much more considered approach and have internal tests that make sure that the software runs as intended. But yeah, half of it in the States, 25% in Europe, then Asia, then everywhere else. vTime is in use in 171 countries around the world. So we now have about tens of thousands of monthly active users. 70% of them are English speakers or identify themselves as English speakers. Rest evenly split amongst 30-plus languages. The app itself is in English only, but that's because there's only very little text. The socializing aspect, of course, happens in whatever language people speak in. So we're fortunate in that a lot of it localizes itself, if you like. So we'll talk a little bit about, when we talk about vTime, we describe it as a sociable network. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes it a sociable network versus a social network, and how do we create it in VR. At Mobile World Congress, Mark Zuckerberg, there was loads of photographs in the press of him walking through the audience, and everybody was wearing Gear VRs, and it was quite a striking image. But Facebook as being the company that sort of created the big bang, if you like, that created this VR universe that we're all finding ourselves in when they acquired Oculus. When someone like that says, VR is about being able to sit in front of a campfire, hang out with friends anytime you want, being able to watch a movie in a private theater, or go to an event anywhere in the world. All these things are going to be possible So we were really, of course, pleased when Mark Zuckerberg said that, because this is one of the original destinations in vTime that came out in December last year. And look at, lo and behold, a campfire. So we can already do it in vTime. These are things that are possible today. The destination here is called Under the Stars. It's currently about 14 different destinations in vTime. You create an avatar. That's a representation of yourself or not, depending on how you want to appear. And then in each session, there's a maximum of 4 participants. We deliberately made a creative decision to limit the number of participants, to 4 people, because it feels like a natural number of people that you're interacting with when you're in a socializing environment. That's not to say we're always going to stick to 4, but certainly that's the number that we decided on for the initial launch. And so out of the 4 participants, there's always one host, and that host in the session is in control over where the conversations take place. The environments can be changed at any point, and I'll show a few more screenshots of some examples of destinations that we have, and we're constantly adding new destinations to the service. So what is a sociable network? And I think this is one of the sort of key things that VR really makes possible versus anything else that's come before it. Social networks, as we know them, quite solitary pursuits. Most people know, you can see when they're on the bus, other people are looking at their phone, they're on Facebook. It's quite sort of solitary. You're interacting, of course, with other people, but you tend to do it on your own. You chat maybe on Messenger with your family and friends. You talk mostly about past and future events, and you share personal or third-party content. Importantly, it's a window into another user's world. Of course, it can result in digital narcissism. We all know the people on our Facebook feed who are always showing us how great their day is or wonderful their life is. But it's really about showing off how great my world is. And what a VR sociable network allows consumers to do is you socialize in real time. You talk in real time. It's mostly about the now. So we imbue the destinations with loads of things that are happening. So there's always something to talk about as you're in these environments. These aren't static environments. But it is a game engine-driven experience. It's not a game, although our background is in games. We consider it a game engine-driven experience. And I think at this point in the life cycle, and certainly on mobile, it produces a much more immersive experience than we would be able to do if we were just relying on video or still images, for example. And you're sharing the same world together. So the beauty about social VR is not only do you believe, or your senses are tricked, that you believe you're somewhere else, you're there with other people and they are seeing and experiencing the same things at the same time as you. There's a fundamental step change in really anything else that's comparable on traditional media or the sort of social networks as we know them today. And it, in theory, promotes sociable interaction. So look how great our world is. So kind of exploring or looking at things together. So how do we do it? Well, of course, it's all about drawing people into an alternate reality. All the destinations are based on Earth, well, almost on Earth. It's a couple that are a bit further out. But we haven't so far ventured into the realms of fantasy or make-believe. We deliberately picked locations that aren't mundane, but they are immediately relatable. And what we really, when we set out with creating vTime, we said, okay, let's make VR for people who think they don't like VR. It's a very comfortable experience. We take that bit of the equation very, very serious because a lot of, over the last couple of days, what has been said about comfort and how some users are affected by, or can be affected by VR. We don't want that at all. So it's a seated experience. We don't move you around. You can, of course, freely move around in terms of looking and stuff, but we deliberately keep the player stationary. That's not to say we don't experiment with maybe some movement in the environment. The latest update was a train carriage, a moving train, a Victorian train of the, well, I got a picture later you can see, and there's some movement there. And so we're sort of feeling our way into that, but it's really about making sure that everybody has a great experience when they come out of the app, and it's reflected, I think, in the 4.5-star average ratings that we have on the Gear VR store and on the Google Play Store. And then we just got out of the way. So let's let them do what they want them to do, which is chat. Let's not overcomplicate, what we're starting with. Let's keep it simple. And then we use what we call broad brushstrokes, which is effectively the destinations, so the locations in which the conversation can take place. And then the fine brush strokes, and this is really where I guess the engineering and the art side are really on an even playing field, because a lot of the fine brush strokes are art related. And I'll give you a small example of that, but the fine brush strokes is what we think creates presence. So in this is the shipwrecked destination. So I think it's on Earth, but it's underwater, and it's a bit different when you see yourself. It's not quite 20,000 leagues under the sea, but it's fairly deep. There's a big abyss next to you. But I want to draw your attention to the bubbles. So we use voice a lot. There's no input. We don't use any input. It's all activated. Menus are activated by looking at the UI and gazing at it. We deliberately choose not to support any controllers because there isn't a ubiquitous controller for mobile VR. But we use the microphone and we use the voice to detect that the player is talking, and if you're underwater, it would stand to reason if you're talking that there's going to be bubbles coming out of your mouth. So these bubbles are actually synced, so you can play around a little bit and you can start shouting and there's lots of bubbles coming out, for example. So the similar thing we're using in one of the destinations called the Arctic, where your breath sort of freezes in front of you. You can see your breath. Now what happens without fail, whenever we've demonstrated this, is people start going, because they can see the breath materializing in front of their face, and it anchors the consumer very well in this world. And the sort of presence trick that most people probably, if they've seen it, are familiar with is seeing your hands on the PC systems. If you have a leap motion attached to your Rift, and all of a sudden you can see your hands in VR, you feel like you're there. And this is sort of another example of how that can be achieved. Nearly out of time. So the sort of differences between social and sociable is really in the fact of the real-time and synchronous and asynchronous nature, and differences between the two. And even Palmer Luckey, in an interview in The Guardian, sort of acknowledged the same thing. I think Facebook themselves said, please don't expect Facebook VR to be just a wall as you know it from your phone, but you're just looking at it on an iMac screen. They obviously have a social VR team of their own, and I'm sure they're going to do some amazing stuff. But for us, it's really this real-time element is something that we're really, really going to be homing in on in the future. So some usage stats, because obviously that's what kind of provides a bit of context in terms of how are people using it, how frequently are they using it. And again, hard to come by really this from other apps. Because we're not a game, we think from what we're seeing, we're obviously seeing longer engagement. We're certainly stacking up very well against traditional mobile apps, which in terms of user behavior, of course, can be quite brutal in how little engagement there is. But we're quite pleased. 75% have increased usage or have the same usage since they started. We have done 10 updates since the title came out at the end of December. So a lot of it is probably a testament to the fact that it wasn't just a fire and forget sort of attempt for us. This is very much, we have a 5-year vision for vTime, so it's very much a long-term play. Session lengths are looking pretty good. Of course, you always have the edge cases. I think 26 hours was the record. Somebody went for a record. The craziest thing we hear from users is how the extent they go to cool down their headsets. So mobile VR, the handsets can still overheat. Our app uses full graphics, uses Wi-Fi, uses all elements of the phone. Probably not how they were originally intended to be used for, but strapping an ice pack to the front of it, putting a big fan in front of their face and having that blow on them all the time to keep the device cool while it's plugged in and just on life support. The 3 top reasons people like vTime is the destinations, the feeling of being there and meeting new people. I'm almost out of time. This is the train I was talking about before, the Empire Express. Came out yesterday. Please check it out if you have a cardboard, if you have a Gear VR. It'll be out on Rift very soon, and we're going to launch actually vTime 2.0 on the Rift. We haven't announced the date yet, but it'll be very soon, and we've got something special lined up to sort of indicate the continuous evolution of this and how we're going to bring some other sort of new features into it that are different to what we've currently got. I'd be happy to take some questions. I can't really see anything.
I'm Paulina from Bailey Gifford. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your plans for monetizing vTime.
Yeah. I mean, it's a free app, I think, as I said at the beginning. So we're going to be experimenting and trying out different things this year. I think there's some obvious lower-hanging fruits. You could have premium destinations. That could be an in-app purchase. Avatar customization is another low-hanging fruit. So some really sort of simple examples of, I think, tried and tested methods, if you like. I think from our point of view, we're under no illusion that it's a couple of years before there's going to be meaning revenues coming out of the consumer market on a sort of sustainable basis. I think there's loads of opportunity now to sell something and have a good few weeks, but if you're really looking to build a business longer term, we're at least a couple of years, I think 2.5 years maybe away from that. Of course, we're looking at advertising, but again, these things only make sense at scale. We've always said we don't want any advertising to break the sense of presence or immersion, so at the moment there's lots of experimentation going on what that actually could look like in practice. There's some couple of other ideas that we have, but it's I think this year certainly is going to be all about experimentation and proving that there is revenue to be made from users that are engaged with a free social app.
Hi.
Hi.
Ian Harper, Future Games of London. Yeah, really impressed by this. It's you seem to have got pretty much first or close to first with the sort of VR campfire simulation. Let's sit around and talk. I'm kind of interested in what is the big difference that VR adds, because a lot of people talk about things like eye contact and even things like lip syncing and the feeling of people really being there when you see somebody else in VR and they start moving like that person, although that's probably difficult with mobile. But have you got any kind of anecdotal little stories just about interactions that people have talked about that they've had in the environment that were just like special and unique to VR that they wouldn't have on Facebook Messenger, for instance? Yeah,
so I think some user stories might come in handy. So we get a lot of feedback from people, and they tell us how they're using the app and what how that's I guess only possible in VR. In fact, just before on Twitter, I saw somebody who said they were on vTime in this environment talking to a young boy from Pakistan who just come out of an earthquake, and the young boy was retelling him the story about the earthquake. Now, because you're in a different environment as well, but you really feel like you're there with that person, he felt compelled enough to tweet about it. I don't know who this guy is, but it was a profound enough effect for him to go, wow, this was not like, I didn't read about this on a news story or saw a video clip that was shared or some other way. It was, again, certainly linking into the sense of being, not only being somewhere else yourself, but being there with another.
No, that's really interesting. Is there any things that you're particularly looking forward to or doing in the app at the minute? In terms
head tracking on mobile VR.
Head tracking?
Head tracking on mobile VR, yes, please.
And does this allow you with, I think eye contact is the kind of critical thing.
We're pretty good with that. I haven't looked at specifically. We haven't really investigated. Things like the Foe, for example, who's got the built-in eye tracking and things like that. It could add another layer to it. We're quite pleased with the system for the animation of the avatars that we have, and that happens without any sort of extra sensors in the headset, and happens on whether you're on carport or whether you're on gear or whether you'll be on any of the other systems. I certainly think hand tracking will bring something to it, but it's for us way too early to say how we would actually sort of utilize that. I think hand tracking mobile VR is going to be there at some point, but the problem is always going to be if it doesn't ship with it, then you're going to end up with a really fragmented user base. So don't know what the answer is going to be to that. But I think those are probably the two things that will, in the near term, make the biggest difference to mobile VR.
Cool. And one last little question is, do people seem more interested, subjectively in talking to you in VR? Because, you're doing all the looking at you and stuff through software. So people are getting the real presence that the other person is paying attention to them and listening to them.
Indeed.
Do people comment on that they find it a friendlier environment in that way?
Yeah.
People appear to be paying attention to them.
People use it to socialize. This is the thing. The use case is really socializing. And if you're a social animal, you're going to have a great time in something like this, because it makes you all of a sudden, like for example, we had a single parent, can't leave the home in the evenings because the kids are asleep in bed, but here's a way through which they can feel like they're still leaving the house and meeting other people and interacting with them and socializing with them in a new and different and unique way.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Check it out. Great. Thank you very much. Happy to chat.